Welcome back. I'm Stephen Asma, and this is part 2 of our live episode recorded from Revolution Hall in Portland. Here we go. See you on the other side, Waggers.
I was super interested in the Minotaur when I was a kid. And I thought, I'm going to look into this, find out about the Minotaur for this. And I was absolutely blown away by the whole story of the Minotaur because I didn't really know it. I knew all the Theseus stuff with the Labyrinth and all that stuff, but I didn't really know the deal with what the Minotaur was, the whole thing of it. And it's also really fascinating because with Greek myths, there's so many different versions of these
there's
things,
tons of different versions.
Which is really weird.
Yeah.
That whole thing is weird.
And then Roman versions.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I just thought, I got the basic one down.
Okay.
And I just thought, I'm gonna bore everybody, but this is so fucking crazy, this story, that I just wanted to let you know that the whole sort of myth of the Minotaur starts in the island of Crete and King Minos, but he wasn't king yet. He was contending to be king with other guys, and then he sort of won power. And as you do, as guys do when they win power, they want the gods to affirm that they belong there.
Naturally.
So he turns to Poseidon, who I guess is the chief god for Crete, because it's an island.
Yeah,
and
makes
and he
sense.
says, "Send me a sign that I'm really the right guy to be running this country." And out of the sea, Poseidon sends a gigantic white bull, comes out of the sea, which is a crazy image to begin with.
I hadn't heard this at all.
Yeah. So the bull comes out, and he said, "Well, clearly I'm meant to be king because here's a bull coming out of the sea." But he makes a fatal mistake in that he doesn't sacrifice the bull, which is what he's meant to do. He doesn't sacrifice.
Well, how do you know what you're supposed to do?
Well, maybe you're not supposed to know, but he didn't do it. He didn't do it. He fucked up, and he pisses Poseidon off. So Poseidon's revenge is to make Minos' wife, Queen Pasiphae, fall in love with the bull, fall in lust with the bull. She goes nuts for this bull. And she says to Daedalus, who's the guy who makes the wax wings and all that stuff, she says to Daedalus, "You got to help me out with this bull. You got to find some way to get me to be able to mate with this bull." It's crazy.
Minotaur after hours.
So much, spicy. Yeah. So spicy. This is Chinwag after hours. Daedalus builds a wooden cow for her to hide in, and the bull mates with her. And she gives birth to this monstrous creature.
Just give me a second.
I know. So she gives birth to this thing. And here's another thing. The Minotaur has a name. I didn't know this. The Minotaur's name is Asterius. And she tries to take care of him. But, he's half bull. He's half man. And all he'll eat is human flesh. And so as he gets bigger, he's out of control.
It's horrifying.
It's horrifying. So Minos says, what the fuck are we going to do with this thing? So he goes to the Oracle at Delphi. Are people still with this? Is this still interesting, people? Yeah, all right. Yeah, whoa!
That's Portland for
I know,
you.
see, Portland. God bless Portland.
God bless Portland.
I know. Because I'm telling you, in L.A., they'd be asleep by now. So he goes, yes. So he goes to the Oracle at Delphi, King Minos. He says, what should I do about this? And this is really interesting. The Oracle doesn't say kill it. The Oracle doesn't say get rid of this monstrous thing. The Oracle says go to Daedalus and he will build you a labyrinth to hide it in. How fucked up is that, too? And that's where you go, these Greek myths are deep, dark, psychic fucking things.
They're really weird.
Hide the fucked up thing in your life. Just hide it under your house. Hide it in a fucking labyrinth. So Daedalus builds him a labyrinth, builds him this huge labyrinth, and they hide him in there. Story goes on. That's not the end. That is not the end. The bull, the great white bull, this huge bull, is still running around Crete, causing all kinds of problems. It's out of control. So the 7th task of Hercules is to catch the Cretan bull.
Oh, that I've heard.
Right.
That it's one of the labors.
Yes. One of his labors is to catch the Cretan bull and relieve Crete of this fucking menacing, gigantic white bull that the queen is having sex with and is giving birth to monsters. So he goes down there, he gets it, and he takes it to some other king who also imprisons it, just like the Minotaur. So that thing gets imprisoned now. All right, now here's where it gets really good, this story.
None of this was in the Disney version of fucking Hercules.
No. This is, so here's the best part of it. The bull escapes, Okay, into Marathon. And what is Marathon in Greece? Is it an area?
It's a place.
It was a place, right?
City.
It's where we get the whole right?
City-state.
It's like,
yeah.
Yeah. What's that?
Yeah.
Exactly. It's a region. Thank you, sir. God bless you for being here. So the bull escapes, and it becomes known as the Marathonian bull. Whatever. That's not important. So anyway, King Aegeus of Athens, who's Theseus' father, he's holding games. He's holding these, like, and all the fine young men of Greece are coming and participating in these games. And the son, the natural son of Minos and Pasiphae, remember them? They're the king and queen of Crete, named Androgeus. He's participating in this. He's the half brother of the Minotaur, and he is the picture of great health. Okay. He's not monstrous. He is this amazing athlete. He participates in this thing. I cannot believe I'm telling this whole fucking story.
This is granular.
And he's winning everything. And the bull shows up in these games.
That's not fair.
Because in Crete, it's not fair, but in Crete, one of the great sports of the Cretan youth is to bull jump. Oh. So he tries to bull jump, and he gets fucking killed by the Marathonian bull. So the natural son of Minos gets killed by the father of the Minotaur, this bull. It's fucking bizarre. The payback of the whole fucking thing is crazy. Mean? And this is what leads to Minos saying to the Athenian king, you now have to send 7 boys and 7 girls to me, and I'm going to feed them to the Minotaur in recompense for you killing my fucking son.
Wow.
Because that bull got out.
Wow.
And so it's all revisited on him. The fucking symmetry thing, the whole fucking story's a labyrinth. It is. It keeps leading back to the bull and bulls. And then labyrinths and bulls are all over the place in Crete. The image, it's on the money.
Oh, is it?
The labyrinth is on the money. There's bulls painted everywhere, all over the place. It's crazy. It's really like, what the fuck is up with that place? And the place itself is crazy because it's where Daedalus was. And he makes all these contraptions for
And Daedalus is the father of Icarus.
Yes.
And Icarus, they fly too close to the sun.
Icarus builds the labyrinth with him, too. They build it together. A nice father-son activity for them is to build a labyrinth to put the Minotaur in. But yes, he does all that stuff for him. But the other thing that's interesting about the Minoans is they seem to be technologically advanced, and a lot of this seems to be attributed, but they actually were. They seem to have central heating under their floors and plumbing, and it's the basis, apparently, the Minoans, for the Atlantis myth, they think. That it was this advanced culture that got wiped out and destroyed by a volcano, I think. But they think that possibly the Minoans are the basis of the Atlantis myth.
Jesus
I have just not shut up for about 10 minutes, haven't I? Sorry, guys. But I find that story so fascinating.
No, my head is spinning.
Because it's so dark and fucked up.
Yeah, it's
really fucked up.
Well, presumably myths are supposed to mean something.
Yeah.
I'm lost here because this is horrifying. I mean, I suppose Freud and Jung would look at this and think like, okay, these are archetypes of some kind.
But this unnatural, fucked up product of the way you've lived your life, you have to hide it.
And it also comes back to punish you later.
You can't get rid of it. Yeah. I mean, so it has that kind of thing to it. You know, he fucks up and he leaves it there. I know more about labyrinths too, but I'm not going to bore everybody with that. But labyrinth thing is a whole interesting thing. It's crazy.
Well, labyrinth makes sense because it's a great metaphor or sort of like allegory of like all of life. Because all of life is a kind of labyrinth. Yeah. You feel like you're going to get out of it, or there's the solution, or I'm almost there, and then you get turned around.
Totally. I think the original idea of a labyrinth, too, was to trap evil shit. Was to be a place where you could trap a demon in a labyrinth was the idea.
But you know that like now, if you look online on YouTube or TikTok, Instagram, there's all these sort of like images of people in liminal space. You know what I'm talking about? Like rooms in between other rooms, and it's like the sort of backstage, and and people are fascinated by this because it doesn't go anywhere. Yeah, and you're just sort of lost in it or whatever.
So you're saying like a labyrinth is kind of like that.
I mean, it's sort of the new version of the labyrinth. I think.
I was interested to learn that the earliest forms of labyrinth were something called unicursal, which means it was only one unambiguous way to get to the center of it. Which is weird. It wasn't a maze is what comes later and is multicursal. Thank you. Which means it has all these dead ends and branching offs and stuff like that. But that was a later development. But the labyrinth that Minos built must have been one of those because Theseus needed a thread to get out of it. So it wasn't one of these simple ones, but originally they were these very symmetrical, simple things where you
like
just went around,
a
got
spiral
to the middle.
or something.
Yeah, it's really weird.
Well, I think in the Minotaur case, like you have a mix of a bull and a human being, and we've talked about this before, but it's interesting, like the shapeshifter thing, because it could be a werewolf is like part wolf and a part man, a woman or whatever, and so there's a sense in which are you taking the thing you're most afraid of and then mixing it with a human so that you can kind of get used to it? Or are you taking something that just has a lot of power in your local community, like a bull, or a horse, and then you're mixing it with a human so you can have a sense that humans are more powerful than they.
Interesting.
It could be both these things.
Yeah, I suppose so. To me, it seems like it's just something really wrong and unnatural.
Well,
you know what I mean? That it's wrong and it's not. So it's uncanny.
It's unnatural.
In some way. Yeah, it's unnatural.
Yeah.
In some way.
One theory is that if you have a thing that's wrong in this way, it sticks in your head better than something that's just normal. And the theory is that if you really want a culture that sticks in people's heads, like a meme that's sticky, then you have these mashups of different kinds of creatures. Because then I'm going to tell it to my friend, like, you can't believe this fucked up thing that's like part this and part that.
Interesting.
So you'll transmit it, and then you have a whole culture is based on this stuff.
Yeah.
But I got one for you.
Okie doke.
This is a creature that is in the Physiologus, and it is called the Aspidochelone.
Okay.
And the Aspidochelone, you will know by another name, maybe, or at least you've heard of this. If you've ever seen a story where these guys are maybe cruising around on a ship or a boat, and they pull up on a tiny island, and they're like, this is a great place to overnight. Let's start a fire. And they start the fire, and then what happens? It starts to shake like there's a sort of an earthquake, and quickly they realize it's starting to dive underwater. And that is the Aspidochelone.
So the whole thing is like
it's an animal.
It's like a fish that you're on.
It's a giant fish, and so he describes it in here as like the Aspidochelone whale. And it basically lures you onto the island, and then it sucks you down.
That's like in like Pinocchio and shit too, isn't it?
But it's crazy that it comes from this.
It comes all the way from that. But that is like a kind of like Jonah and Pinocchio and all that stuff. With everybody getting to eat, does it then eat you and stuff, or is it just, well, it must, right?
Yeah,
There's
then
no point
it
to
eats you. Yeah,
drowning you unless it's going to eat you too. I'd never heard of that one. That's crazy. There's the rock bird. Do you know that one?
Oh,
that's
yeah,
another
gigantic
one.
from Middle Eastern culture.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. And that's a similar thing that Sinbad gets to. I think it's in the 1001 Nights.
Yes, it
the
is.
Arabian Nights, and he gets to this island and he sees this gigantic white domed building. And he doesn't know what it is, and he's climbing all over it. And it's a fucking egg because it's the rock bird's egg. And it comes back, and it's not pleased that he's climbing all over the egg.
It's interesting. There are these giant creatures like the griffin, like the rock, and you'll see that they'll go cross-culture. Like dragons are sort of cross-cultural. You'll see the east and the west.
Dragons are a whole other thing. I mean, that's like something we could spend a whole other thing on. And they're very different meaning. There's a very different meaning to the Chinese that there is to the people in Western culture.
Europe, yeah.
Do you know the difference?
Well, I think in China, generally it's a positive creature. Sometimes the Chinese will say that they're the Longren. The Longren means like we're the people of the dragon. We are the dragon people.
Right.
And so it's a magical beast. You'll see reference to it in Taoism and later in like Zen paintings and stuff. And I think it's considered to be a protector, whereas I think the Western is trouble.
It is, and it's always hoarding treasure and stuff, and it's guarding stuff, and it's all like Smaug and all that stuff. Yeah, that's interesting because actually the unicorn, I read up about the Chinese unicorn, which is very different because the Western one's really ferocious, but the Eastern one, the Chinese one's very gentle.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's completely the opposite thing.
I think the Chinese have a much better, healthier attitude towards these creatures.
No, that's true, actually. There seems to be much more of a kind of like acceptance of monsters or something like that in some way that's really interesting.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
That's I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I was actually, it's now reminding me because there's an interesting thing, and I thought this was cool because I didn't think of Confucius as a person that had sort of fabulous stories relating to him.
Not usually.
Not usually, but a unicorn was his mother was pregnant with him, and a unicorn appeared to her to announce that she was going to give birth to this great sage.
Interesting.
Yeah, but it's kind of crazy. The Chinese unicorn is like covered with scales and stuff like that, and it's also sort of crazier looking, but it's very gentle. And in the story, she ties a piece of silk around his horn, and then when Confucius is very old, somebody kills a unicorn, a hunter kills a unicorn, and he says, I want to see this fabulous beast, and he goes out to look at it, and it has a piece of silk tied around its horn.
Wow. Cool.
And he knows, and knows he's going to die now, too. So it's really, yeah. But it's cool that it's like, but it's a much more gentle thing.
I wonder if you think about Western culture, it starts with Adam naming the animals. And if you look at Book of Genesis, it's like, here's nature, here are the animals, but human beings have mastery over the animal kingdom. This is how it's said. We're supposed to shepherd nature, but we're more powerful. We're more like God, the Imago Dei. We have reason and all this stuff. So this can lead to some exploitation because we're supposed to be higher than the animals. Whereas I think in the Eastern tradition, humans are just more like a part or a member of the animal family. So maybe there's more acceptance. Maybe I'm just speculating.
It's not seen as. When did people start making zoos? Do we know that kind of thing? Like
it's a great question. I think,
ma'am, does anybody know?
Ancient Egypt, okay.
Ancient Egypt is when they start, really, that far back, they start making zoos, like menageries, and gathering animals together.
Oh, the audience is like competing with each other now to, no, go ahead.
Zoos were for people. They keep people in a zoo.
Yeah, you're thinking of Barnum and,
oh, yes.
P.T. Barnum and freak shows and stuff like that.
Freak shows, you're talking about, things like that. Oh, yes.
1893,
they would have this
World
kind of
Fair.
like, here's all the different cultures from around the world, and they would keep people in cages.
There's a famous 1893 World's Fair in Chicago. This is the one where H.H. Holmes was murdering people. You remember this, right?
Now we're talking.
Now we're talking.
Now we're talking. Enough about this fucking fabulous beast.
What's this fucking
Let's talk about a serial killer. Yeah, okay. All right, here we go.
That was just an aside.
No. Now you got to talk about H.H. Holmes.
Okay, so while Holmes is basically luring innocent women to his murder castle, people are displaying basically it's called the White City in Chicago, and they're displaying animals, but also they've brought whole tribes from other parts of the world. It's pretty exploitative stuff.
H.H. Holmes. You were telling me recently something that I didn't know about him, which was that house. He had that house built.
Yeah.
Right? It did not exist before. He had it built.
Well, I think the shell of it was there, and he built he just redid the inside of it.
He sure did. Yeah. But I think you were telling me that he had different people build different parts of it?
Yes.
Were you telling me this?
Yes.
So that they wouldn't know what parts of it, nobody would know what sort of secret thing was being done. And so,
apparently there was, imagine like a 3-story house and then a sort of a cellar, and he would lure women into various places in the house, and they would have like a trap door and a torture center, and then it would drop people through and then around and down again, eventually down to the basement. But the guys who designed the house didn't know what they were making, because he would hire them, they'd do one floor, and then he would fire them. Bring in a new team, they would do that floor.
Right.
So he was smart in that way. You know what I mean? I don't mean I'm not.
He was crafty.
Yeah, they'll be like, Dr. Asma loves H.H. Holmes.
Exactly, nice one. What happened to him? I don't really. Did he get? I've never read.
I'm sure our audience will tell us.
Yeah, I know. Does anyone know what happened, sir? He was executed. He was caught and executed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
They chased him down eventually and
did.
Found him. Yeah.
Crazy.
Back to animals real quick here.
Please.
We can go back to serial killers, but I think you're going to enjoy my little paragraph about the horrifying creature that we know as the beaver. Now, let me see if I can find this real quick here. I promise
Were people putting beavers in their paintings a lot?
No, but there is a kind of...
but there's an entry on the beaver in the handbook, in the mystical creature handbook.
You love the way I queued this up.
Did people think a beaver was well, I guess I'm
going to tell you what they thought,
here
Paul.
we go.
There is an animal called the beaver who is extremely inoffensive and quiet. His genitals are helpful as a medicine, and he is found in the king's palace. Okay?
Uh-huh.
Are you with me?
Yes.
When the beaver sees the hunter hastening to overtake him in the mountains, he bites off his own genitals, and he throws them before the hunter. If another hunter happens to pursue him later on, he throws himself on his back and shows himself to the hunter. And the hunter, seeing that the beast has no genitals, departs from him. So that's a
presumably what the hunter wants is the beaver's genitals.
Yes.
Would the beaver's genitals have some extraordinary properties?
Yeah, Viagra.
Okay. Here's the interesting thing, though. I actually brought this up the other day, and you scoffed at me.
No.
That in the Shinto religion, and I've seen it, if you've been in Japan, you know what I'm going to be. I know Shinto. I haven't been there. Okay, all right. And the outside of a lot of the Shinto shrines, and then there's also outside of a lot of Japanese homes, is this sort of good luck charm beast. And I don't know what animal it is. I don't know if it's a beaver. What is it? Tanuki. Yeah, so what is
tanuki.
it? What is it? It's a raccoon with gigantic balls. No, it does. It's got a huge scrotum. It's got a humongous scrotum on it. No, and it's all over the place.
The show is all over the place.
No. It does. Thank you. And you've never seen this?
I have not seen it.
Yeah, and I guess it's a good luck thing. It's some sort of good fortune thing.
Prosperity.
Yes, exactly. So that's interesting because that's really weird that it relates to our friend the beaver and his scrotum. And that's fascinating.
The relation is tenuous. We may be forcing.
But it's just interesting. All over the world, there's a thing like a beaver, and it's about its scrotum.
True though that apart from our contemporary culture, which is very puritanical, most other cultures have celebrated the body and as a way of celebrating fertility, whether it's the crops or whether it's having children. There's all this imagery of genitals. I mean, we've talked about the lingam in India or in Southeast Asia. It's just a giant phallus.
Yeah.
And the yoni is like a giant uterus. And these are in the temples, they're in the Hindu temples. It's not
so much of the generative Egyptian myth is tied to castration.
Yeah, wasn't the god
or one of those guys
castrated?
Sir, you isn't one of them is castrated. And Osiris, yes.
Then they made him a wooden penis or something. What was the? They're confirming for me.
Very good.
Okay, good.
No, amazing. Yeah, fascinating.
How did we get here?
I don't know. I really don't know, Steve.
Wooden penis of Egypt.
We're in Portland talking about wooden penises.
But here's a question for you. If you think about this stuff, in the medieval world, nature was a kind of, there's the book of God, which is the Bible, but the book of nature is also written by God. So you have to study it to understand what God wants and what we should be doing. And I think even though we don't have that view anymore, we do think of animals as sometimes being moral and immoral. But it's weird. It's for example, now the pit bull is sort of demonized as an evil animal, right?
Seems like that's changing. Though.
Yeah, no, I think it's kind of just trendy. We don't know. There's no truth to this. Maybe there is. I'm just saying we think about nature this way, in moral terms.
Poisonous animals are seen as worse.
Ugly animals are evil and cute ones are good.
Right.
Stuff like that.
Yeah. That's what I thought was so odd about the unicorn, was that it was actually kind of violent and sort of out of control in its original sort of conception, which was just weird to me.
Yeah.
Because nothing about it seems like how you get to this place where it's not anymore is really interesting.
There's a letter that when Alexander is studying to basically before he becomes the world conqueror.
Supposedly he rode a unicorn into battle.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah, there's a legend that he rode a unicorn into battle.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Bucephalus is a horse, though.
Yeah.
It had a horn? Good Lord, sir. This is amazing. Amazing.
Wait, did it really have a horn or it was just...
So Bucephalus was a unicorn.
Cephalus just means head.
Okay.
But there is a letter that Alexander writes back to Aristotle, who is his teacher, and he's basically in India, and he's describing the crazy shit that he's seeing.
Yeah.
And one of the things is he's describing this animal that he sees, and it looks like it's a giant creature that has a horn, and it attacks the soldiers at some point. And so the medievals loved this letter because it included all this other stuff, giant serpents, all kinds of huge bats, everything. But the unicorn is described in there too. And I think that's, again, like you were saying, I think it's the rhino that they're seeing, and this is how they're describing.
I'm going to read you one final thing here, closing out the unicorns, because I thought this, again, going back to the Chinese, because it's a different sort of take on what you just said of describing the things. And it's interesting because there's so much of this kind of, I have the firsthand account of this unicorn, and I am Marco Polo and I saw a goddamn unicorn, and it's like all of this very sort of like certain thing. And this was interesting. And this is from this book that Borges wrote.
The great Argentinian writer.
Yeah, the great Argentinian writer wrote this great sort of book of imaginary beasts. Which is a kind of modern sort of like bestiary that he put together.
Fantastic.
And he quotes at the end of the entry about the Chinese unicorn, he finds it in a French collection of Chinese literature. And he says, this book includes this mysterious, soft-spoken allegory, the work of a 19th century writer of Chinese prose. And it goes like this. It is universally held that the unicorn is a supernatural being and of auspicious omen, so say the odes, the annals, the biographies of worthies, and other texts whose authority is unimpeachable. Even village women and children know that the unicorn is a lucky sign. But this animal does not figure among the barnyard animals. It is not always easy to come across. It does not lend itself to zoological classification. Nor is it like the horse or bull, the wolf or deer. In such circumstances, we may be face to face with a unicorn and not know for sure that we are. We know that a certain animal with a mane is a horse and that a certain animal with horns is a bull. But we do not know what a unicorn looks like.
Nice.
Then that applies to all this shit. You know, and it's this idea too that mystery pervades everything.
It's true.
That you could be looking at a unicorn, you could be the unicorn. Anything could be, but anything could be the unicorn, which is fucking awesome, I think.
That's classic really Borges.
Cool.
Yes.
Yeah, isn't that cool, man? I love that.
I think that that's something that Borges and we in the Chinwag are interested in, which is like, there's a way to categorize the world, and then there's all this shit that does not fit in the categories.
Does not fit in. Yeah, and so mystery pervades everything in some really cool way.
Another great Chinwag. Thanks again to Portland's Revolution Hall. And next week is our favorite part of these live Chinwags, the crazy Q&A portion of the show. Paul and I love meeting and talking to our Chinwag fans, so you don't want to miss this one. Until then, you know what to do. Wag on. Chinwag is a production of Treefort Media and Touchy Feely Films. Hosted and executive produced by Paul Giamatti and Stephen Asma. Executive producers for Treefort are Kelly Garner and Lisa Ammerman. Dan Carey is executive producer for Touchy Feely. Our series producer is Rachel Whitley Bernstein. Original theme music by Luke Topp, with additional music by Via Mardot. Oscar Guido is our executive in charge of production. Tom Monahan is head of audio for Treefort. Audio production supervision by Jared Brom and Matt Dyson. Editing and mixing by Jeff Neal. Animation created by Alex Sokol. Research assistance by Aidan Brooks. Lastly, for more information, go to chinwagpod.fm and find us on Instagram or TikTok at chinwagpod or on Twitter at chinwag_pod.